I'm going to turn things over to Stephanie, who has a lot of experience supporting kids to do digital storytelling. Up to this point, we've given you tools for digital storytelling, and we've given you, hey, we want you to have your kids do it, but we haven't given you any real strategies for how to teach it. And that's where Stephanie is such a huge resource, and I'm really excited to have her share with you today. She's going to share some tools and things from her classroom. So take it away, Stephanie.
Okay. All right, we're going to start just by talking about Storymaker, which is a resource that is a brand new resource from PBS Student Reporting Labs. They just launched this last fall. So we can take a look at that. I find it's the most useful with some, you gotta log in. It's all free. And I find it the most useful thing is their library. It has a lot of really good ideas and lessons on like just the skills that you need in order to storytell. And so I work with middle school students, and basically my whole goal with them is just if I can get them to tell a coherent story that someone else other than them can understand, that's great. So I'm going to share some examples of some projects that I've done with students here in a little bit. I use Storymaker. I was doing a lot of PBS Student Reporting Lab stuff earlier in this year, and I went through the training, the workshop that they did last summer. But it's hard. Middle school is a really difficult age to try to engage kids in like serious types of projects, and my video projects are mostly with 8th graders, and keeping them engaged in serious like material is not fun for me. So I try to keep it kind of light and casual, but they also do have some good ideas if you're looking for nonfiction stories, contemporary things. Sometimes they've got some good ideas. A lot of it's very focused on urban youth, and it doesn't relate very well to rural Montanans like youth so much. Like they just don't really quite connect with it very well. But they do have some really good resources with like get that B-roll. And so if you're talking with students about why they shouldn't just stay, I don't know if I can find it. I find that one critique I do have of this website is that they need to work on their filtering a little bit in terms of like when you're looking for things, it doesn't always come up the way that you might think that it would. So it takes some time to like search for it. Let's see if we can get it now. Nope. But it's called Get That B-roll. Okay. No. All right. I'll just try to keep talking while I keep looking for it. But they've got some good like lessons on like framing up, like how you use a camera. And I think my favorite one so far is that like get that B-roll. Why does it keep putting that in? Let's see, it should be in here somewhere. But if you're interested, yeah, so like what makes a good video story? It has some good introductory types of things, like what is newsworthy. If you're interested in doing things that are along the lines with journalism, it's good to go over with kids what news is and what constitutes as being newsworthy, because they don't know any of it. I don't think a lot of adults even sometimes know. If you're going to do interviewing, so if you want to do like a storytelling project that involves kids like interviewing family members or something, I mean, I would be totally down with partnering with like a social studies teacher. If they were doing like a family genealogy project or a family history project, that'd be something really fun to do. And it can be helpful. I will say that most of these lessons are definitely geared towards high school. And so there's a lot of adjusting that often needs to happen if you're going to use them at middle school or even like elementary. You might just have to pick and choose the things that might work and then make adjustments from there. Yeah, it's not even in here. I don't even know where it is. It might just be a video with the B-roll. They have a B-roll video, but there's like a worksheet that goes with it. And that's the one that I really like because kids will often just talk to the camera and it's super boring and they're like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. And you're like, this is awful. No one wants to watch this. You wouldn't want to watch this. And so teaching about B-roll is really useful because it teaches them to use those alternative footage to engage their audience more and to get them from just sitting and talking to the camera or showing the person that they're interviewing the whole time. I think it's under video. Let's see what we get if we look at video. Yeah, there it is. Get that B-roll. So this one's probably my favorite, and I bet if I had actually gone to my saved stuff, it'd probably be under there. But there's this great video. It explains all these different concepts around B-roll. They have a worksheet with a key that helps kids sort of identify when B-roll is being utilized within a video. So I find that pretty useful. And then if you wanted to do something sometimes with the challenges that they initiate with Storymaker, it's good if you're looking for resources and ideas for doing like journalistic style projects with students. And it is better organized than it was before. Before it was just like a Google Drive folder full of things or a website that had some resources on it, but it was really difficult to navigate. So it's definitely getting better. And I hope they keep adding different things to it. You can also look up like stories that they've done that have been submitted by other students if you're looking at journalism and things like that. But again, I'd say 90%, 85 to 90% is high school. So you just kind of have to know your own kids and if it's going to be valuable to them. Does anybody have any questions about Storymaker before I move on? All right. I could present this. Yeah. Okay, so the hardest part I think about doing video projects with students in general is just how do you get them to tell a story? And so I start with teaching plot structure or reviewing plot structure because I mean 8th graders, they've heard it before in ELA class and they've heard it. And so I utilize different resources to review plot structure so that they understand the components that are necessary to tell a story. One really awesome resource that I really recommend is the Pixar in a Box, and they have a unit in Khan Academy called, scroll down, the art of storytelling. And sometimes I just pick and choose, but you could use this as like a group activity. You watch the videos together, or if you have kids that are off, say we're in this time, I don't know, it's such a weird time, but it's nice because it's accessible to everyone if they're in person or if they're online. And it goes through just like perspective and like the concept of storytelling and characters and worlds. And they have these little activities that kind of get kids thinking about like what makes, because that's something I always start with is like what, you know, tell me about like a favorite story, like what's your favorite movie, like, and what's your favorite story in general, like what makes a good story, and just talking with kids about and having a class discussion about like what is it that makes a good story a good story. And so what would you say if I asked you what makes a good story? Anyone? Or is just you just want me to keep talking? I feel like I'm teaching middle schoolers here. Anyone? Bueller?
Characters?
Yeah, characters, definitely characters. So they'll say things like characters, a good climax, connecting with, you know, things that are happening, a really exciting plot. So we dig into some of those things in terms of what, you know, like makes a good story. And it is like having things that are like a sequential events that move along quickly, that keep you interested, in like believable good characters that you identify with, and exciting rising action and a good climax, a twist or something like that is often what we talk about when we're talking about things like that. And this just keeps going into like characters. We don't spend a ton of time on characters because I only have my students for a quarter, which is like 9 weeks. And just getting them to tell a coherent story is totally enough. It's just this recent, I'm doing a new project that I've never done before, doing a complete short film, narrative film. And they are supposed to try to focus on integrating characters more so than they have before, because they haven't really been told to focus on characters. So I'm really interested to see what they come up with. But they've got some great activities in here in terms of what makes good characters and like how do you incorporate characters into your story. And they go through story structure, which is what I focus on the most with kids, is a 3-act structure, which all that is beginning, middle, and end. And we use that super cheesy plot diagram that we all learned, or a lot of us probably learned, what I did when I was in like high school, of the mountain building and going down. And so I use that a lot with my students to get them to conceptualize that they need to set up the who, what, when, where kind of details before they dive in to telling a story. Because middle schoolers will just be like, all of a sudden all these things are happening and it doesn't make any sense. You watch it, you're like, well, I don't know what this is. And it's because they didn't introduce the setting or the characters or any kind of initial problems. They just jump right into rising action. And so introducing these kinds of concepts really helps students to tell a coherent story. And so I found this very helpful. I don't always teach it every single one, but it's got some good activities in it that can help define vocabulary with the kids and the different aspects of storytelling. And you can go into visual language, which I don't usually use with kids, and film grammar, if you really want to get into sort of the more, a little bit more advanced. Depends on sort of like, are you filming with cameras? Like I have cameras that they use, or are they just using iPads or Chromebooks, or it just kind of depends on your resources. But it can be really useful to introduce kids to different shots and angles that you can use to convey emotion, or to just, it helps me with getting them to break up so they just don't film everything in one single shot, because then no one wants to watch that either. It's kind of fascinating to think, if I'll just ruin film for you in general right now. Just the next show that you watch, just pay attention to how often the camera angle changes. And you'll notice that it changes like every 5 to 8 seconds. Like our brains don't like things that are stagnant. And so camera angles are constantly changing all the time. And so I try to get kids to notice that so that they can incorporate, they love to just film. They just film long things all the time. It's just like one big long scene. But I try to get them to break it up by using different camera angles. And it also helps them portray different emotions and things like that too. And they go into like feedback and stuff like that in here. So this can be a really useful resource if you're looking to incorporate some digital storytelling and kind of how to get started. If you're like, I don't know what to do, this has some really good resources in it. So, oh, and here's that plot diagram. Here's like the one that I just stole off the internet somewhere and put in some text boxes. And so I often will have kids fill this out, especially when we're just getting started in the quarter and we're just introducing the concept of storytelling. They fill this out as they craft their stories to make sure that they have all the elements that they need to tell a story. And I also highly recommend using a storyboard to get student, and it's super basic. All I do is make a table in Google Docs. It's not a big deal. You could print these and kids can draw on them if you want to, but I am not a visually artistic person at all. So I'm totally fine with them just filling these boxes out in terms of like what's going to go in your video editing software. So this would be like title screen. I'll just write in here. And then they would kind of just write like, what are they going to put in here? And then this would be the next thing that they're like, okay, opening shot, low angle, or something like, you know, the wide shot of the school. And they just are planning out, because if I let them and I don't make them do any planning, they will just make it all up as they go along and it'll be a total mess. And so they have to plan out their plot structure, but they also have to kind of plan out how is the video going to be sequenced and what are they thinking about in terms of how will their story progress in different video segments as they're filming. I get them to think a little bit about dialogue. I don't make them write a script, but I do kind of make them put what their dialogue might be and what they're kind of planning on. Because it's a shocker to them to reveal that not everything is ad-libbed. I know, surprising. So those are all resources. I put them in a put these two in a Google folder that you should have access to. If you would want to make a copy of them, you are more than welcome to utilize those if they are interesting to you. And then here's some, I have these just, I think, go to folders if I can remember correctly from 10 days ago when I planned all this. They just have copies of the assignments. This one doesn't have a video in it because it's very personal and I didn't want to share the names of my students and like images of them and stuff like that without asking. So this is one I start with in 8th grade. It's called Me in 60 Seconds. It's a really fun way to just kind of kick off the quarter. And I mostly know all my students because I have them in 6th and 7th grade. Some I don't, but being very egocentric that middle schoolers are, most of them really enjoy curating photos of them and videos of themselves and then making a short little video about themselves. And so they have to make a 60-second video using a combination of pictures, and they can use videos if they want to, and they have to narrate, which a lot of them hate, but I make them do it anyway. And they have to explain like their life and who they are. And so I have an example one that I need to remake. It's not very good, and that's why I don't want to show you it because I don't really like it very much. But it's fun, and they get to use their smartphones, and we go over like some good tech tools, like how you upload things to Google Drive to get your photos. It's just like other good technology, like best practices that they should probably know how to do. But they can use stock footage. We use WeVideo, which I think Sarah Dahl, who's a colleague of mine, also taught you about, and it's a great resource. And we use that, and they can use stock footage because not everybody, you know, is lucky enough to have a smartphone. You know, their parents don't let them, or this or that. So like I work with students on like, you know, what's going to work for this, but it's basically has to be images in their voice at least. And so they have to storyboard it, practice doing storyboards, and it helps them sequence, you know, things together, and then they narrate it, and I give them some tips on like what could they include, because they're like, I can't talk about myself for 60 seconds. What? Shocker, you can. So, and they're fun to watch. Like I have to watch all of them, and they're usually actually quite good. And the things that they choose to talk about, it's a great way to connect with your students and kind of get to know where they're at in their life, or like what they're into, and gives you some, especially with 8th graders, it can be really hard, gives you some ways to make connections with them. So that's one that's, I really like it. It's very fun. I have a rubric that goes with it too. If you're interested in any of this, feel free to borrow it. Yeah. Let's see. All right. This is one of my favorite ones. So after that, we do a basic storytelling one that just is another like practice. And then this is when they start using the cameras, and I introduce camera angles to them, and they have to incorporate camera angles into this project. And it's called, they get to work in groups, and it's called Day in the Life of a Middle Schooler. and they sort of are supposed to use hyperbole and exaggeration to create what a day in the life of a middle schooler is like. And they usually end up being quite hilarious, which is what I really enjoy about it. And so I have them, we go over all of these camera angles, and then they have to incorporate like 4 or 5 of the camera angles into their project. They have to usually do the story structure and the storyboard to sequence out their stuff. So it's always kind of the same things that we always focus on and reinforce, and then I kind of add new stuff as we go along. And then it's got what their final product needs. And then this one,
There we go.
can you hear it now? Okay. We also do movie trailers. I don't know if anybody ever uses Google Applied Digital Skills at all. Like Google has all these like different resources that you can use to teach different technology lessons, which is a topic for a different time. But I used to do this one called, it's like budgeting a movie, and it has all these fake movies and like actors and stuff, and it's way too advanced for middle school. But I do like the fake movies a lot. And so I took the fake movies, and now we do movie trailers for fake movies. And this one, everything is like the same, but this is where we incorporate the green screen in it as well. So this one, it's very similar. I use a lot of the same stuff with the storyboard. And I attached my example. Oh, that's not it. It's these ones, movie ideas. So some different movies, and they have the different genres. And so it gives everybody like something to, that they look at, and it's got the synopsis already for them. They're just focusing on not giving away any kind of ending and like what a movie trailer usually looks like. And we do a storyboard. I have a rubric, and then I just have like the explanation of the assignment and what they need. They're supposed to put sound effects and video effects. They have to pick one of the things that we've kind of already done before, and then incorporate the green screen with their camera angles this time around. I have some other stuff at the bottom that is just for our school about, because they go in the halls and film, and they can go to other classes and things like that. Yeah, but it's fun. And so I don't know, kids are pretty into it. And here's an example, one of our movie trailers. obviously, like, okay, you have some like really good ones, but I'm like, yeah, and then you have like really terrible ones because there's just the kids that are just like, oh. So don't think that all of them are like really good because they're not. But they are really fun, and you'll get a, I don't know, it's just kind of a fun thing to do as you're like building up to storytelling, especially maybe if you're like this in the beginning, because they don't have to tell a full story, it's just part of a story, and it's just kind of fun to see the creative ways, and it's a really good way to talk about like shots and why you don't film everything all at once. And that group did a fabulous job of little short clips and cutting back and forth between things that it like made it really good. And we always talk about that when we watch them, because there's a couple of projects, Day in the Life of Middle Schooler and the movie trailer, that we always watch as a class. And I tell them beforehand, I was like, you better make it good because we're all watching it. We're all going to give you feedback. And those are the things that the kids always mention, students always mention, you know, is the use of cutting away, using different shots and not staying on stuff for too long. And yeah, so that's a really fun one too. And then we're working on our narrative shorts right now, but this is my newest project, and I'm just really curious to I'm just kind of piloting it with this group. Recorder's over on Friday, so they don't have quite as much time as I probably would normally give them, but I still think they'll be able to pull something together. And so we just, now that they've kind of been doing this for a whole quarter, trying to put it together into like a 5-minute long video that tells a story. And I tell them like they can use an idea that already exists. They can come up with their own story. There's some pretty interesting stories out there. So I wish I had one that I could share with you, but I don't. We also talk about how the 3-act structure can easily be broken down into, you know, like a 1 minute is that exposition piece of like introducing, grabbing audience's attention. Act 2 is like the meat of like, that's the bulk of it. 3 minutes, this is what's happening, you're advancing your story along. And Act 3 is like the closure. And I show them some examples. I found a really good like scary short, it's like a 2.5 minute long like horror film, but it's just a jump scare at the end, that there's nothing like bad in it. And a lot of them are now like, oh yeah, we're gonna do something scary with a scary ending. So that'll be fun to see. And then I also found some from some like middle school film festival there's a couple of like meddling examples that I found on YouTube as well that show, it's a little longer than what it would be expected, but we watched one just to show how like a story progresses and how they use their theme throughout. And I think it gave some of them some good ideas. And so they're supposed to focus on character development in this one. But it's only 5 minutes long, so it's not like it's super duper long. Yeah, we kind of just go through it as usual, where they work with their group and they storyboard, and then I have to see their storyboards before I let them go and film. So they're all kind of filming and editing right now, and then hopefully we'll get to watch them on Friday before our quarter's over. Yeah, I think those are my resources. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions, but those are the projects that I'm currently using with my 8th graders. We do one how-to video. I just watched those today and they are actually pretty good. And that was like, I was gone and I wanted something short and kind of easy. So I let them either pick a how-to video to work with the partner, or they could do like a video to their future self. And I only had one person do that, but it was really interesting. I told her today, I was like, I'm gonna send us to you like in like 5 years so that you can see it, like how goofy you were when you were in middle school. It's gonna embarrass you so much. And she's like, oh my God. But yeah, and then a lot of the how-to videos were like kind of funny. Some of them did like how not to be anxious in public, or like how to get a boyfriend was pretty funny. And yeah, some of them were just like how to like lift weights, or just, oh, the group that always does a really good job did how to open a door, and it was like so oversimplified and like and hilarious. I should find that one really quick while Nikki's talking. I could show you at the end because it's it's pretty funny. And it's just like, wow, this is very specific on how to open a door. It's great. All right, Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm pretty novice at a lot of these tools that we've been learning about. My class, I teach a second and third grade combined class, and we've been playing around a lot, literally with video. And I started a couple kids messing around with iMovie last week. So I really liked your idea of some of your things like a day in the life of, and you're talking about yourself in 60 seconds. I wonder, do you think for this age group it would be easier to use something like iMovie, where they actually are there with the iPad filming each other? It seems like it has a lot less frills and things than WeVideo does. What's your thought on those, or maybe other tools that they could use?
Yeah, I think you should just use what you have. And if you already have iPads and iMovie works well and it's something that students take to really naturally, I think it's totally fine to do that. Like you could also, I do book trailers with my 7th graders, and you could do something similar because I know iMovie has like a template that you can make trailers with, and it makes really cool like sequences, and like the lower thirds are already there and stuff like that. Might be kind of a fun, like, you know, scaffolded, that's the word I was looking for, project for like a younger group. If they had like a really firm topic that they had to make like a little trailer on or something like that, and iMovie would have more of like the components that would make it easier and you could focus more on the storytelling. WeVideo has the basic, they have that really basic version that my kids find frustrating because you can't do very much in it, but they do have one that's just, it seems like it's very much geared towards like elementary school too.
Yeah, I had, when you were speaking, I did make a note of doing like book trailers, because right now we're working on persuasive writing, and part of that might be some book reports or reviews or movie reviews. But I thought when I saw your idea of the trailers, I thought that would be a lot more fun, and kind of like, you know, on the cover of the book or in the back where they talk about, you know, the little synopsis of the story to get you to jump into it. It'd be cool if they made videos like that, you know, to try and get the audience involved in there. But yeah, I had thought of that too. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I have my 7th graders do, that's what we're finishing up with right now, is they have to write a book review, which I get I've never read a book. And I'm like, yes, you have. And they can do a picture book if they want to. I don't really care. But they have to pick a book and they have to write a synopsis of their own on it, which obviously is a little bit more advanced than what you would do with 2nd and 3rd graders. And then they turn that into a book trailer in WeVideo. So I think that would be a great project. They just took the synopsis and then they could turn it into a trailer on an iMovie or something like that. Would be really fun. I bet they'd have a blast doing that. Cool. Anybody else have any questions? Comments, concerns, smart remarks? Well, if Nikki wants to talk for a minute, I can go find that.
Yeah, I can do that.
A how-to video.
Go ahead and find your video. I'm gonna go back to the slides and remind everybody about our partner resources. Also, I guess I'll remind you about the sign-in sheet. I've got 10 responses, so I feel pretty good about the sign-in sheet, and I think come prize drawing time, we'll be in good shape. But if you haven't filled out the sign-in sheet and you don't want to be excluded from the prize drawing, now is a good time to get your name on that. I'll remind you about our partner resources. Remember, Montana Historical Society and Humanities Montana have partnered with us to help us get the word out about this. and then share some of their resources. I haven't talked about them in a little bit, so I'll just remind you, remember there is an oral history in the classroom mini footlocker available from the Historical Society that you can have shipped to your school to go through this kind of work with them. And then this is the PDF of the lessons that go along with it. So if you wanted to just attempt to find pieces of the lessons that work for you instead of using the footlocker, you could do that. And I've shown this BLM GLO records before. This is a great way to look up the homesteading records for any state, actually. And this came up when I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, that you could, if your kids are not from Montana, but they maybe they had ancestors homestead in Arkansas or Kansas, you can use any state for this to see if you can find those homesteading records. And then, of course, the digitized newspapers online is a free way to go and look through newspaper records. Or if you wanted to subscribe to newspapers.com, that's another way to get kids going with their research. And then if you are still thinking of family research and having kids use an online tool to conduct family research, consider Family Search, which is free, or ancestry.com. I met a teacher at the Agate conference 2 weeks ago in Missoula who starts her classes by taking them through ancestry.com and having them, all of her kiddos, do the ancestry.com and find their family tree. And that's how she sets up social studies and English language arts for the year, is to first have them identify where their families are from. And then they can find a way to make that relevant as they're studying history, which I just thought was brilliant. This is such a neat way to make history relevant for kiddos by having them connect to it personally. Humanities Montana has the Speakers in Schools program, where you can pay a little bit. The school works with the organization to make sure it's affordable to have a professional storyteller connect with your class. And they're doing them virtually right now, which makes it a little bit easier, maybe less engaging, but I think for some, they're pretty good. And you can go through their list of all of the different storytellers that they've got. And I see that is a really nice example of this is what high quality trained storytelling looks like. What can we learn from this exemplar, and how can we use this in our own storytelling? So make sure to check those things out on the slides. Steph, do you have? I love this.
Step 1. Find yourself a door that requires opening. Step 2. Observe whether the door is a pull door or a push door to avoid the embarrassing scene of hurling yourself at a door that is in fact a pull door. Step 3. Position yourself 1.5 feet from the door, feet shoulder-width apart, facing the door handle. Step 4. Look at the door handle and assess its shape. Step 5. Bend your elbow that is on the opposite side of your body that the door handle is on the door at 90 degrees and slowly extend your hand forward to the door handle. Make sure your fingers aren't too high or too low to avoid bashing them into the door, causing damage. This will avoid the embarrassing scenes of the throw and run and the ballerina, which you see here. Step 6. Tip your hand so your palm is facing the door handle and curl your fingers around the knob. Step 7. Grip the knob and rotate your wrist to the right. Step 8. Without letting go of the knob, retract your arm towards you, pulling the door with it. Step 9. Walk forward into the doorway. Once you are past the threshold, let go of the door handle cautiously to avoid the earth-shattering sound of slamming and continue walking. That's all. Now put your new skills to work.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty clever. It was like over the top, you know.
I love that. Thank you
It's
so
pretty
much.
funny. I had one group do like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and yeah, it was just kind of interesting what they decided to do for videos about. I like when they're slightly humorous and sarcastic.
So join us next week so that you can learn from Ann Brucker again. She's going to teach us about sketchnoting and digital note taking using an app that is an iOS app for your iPhone or your iPad. It's another Apple only one. It does cost money. It's about $4.99. But it is so worth it. And if you know Anne and you've seen Anne present, I think you'll really enjoy this. She's a really great presenter, and she's been sketchnoting for a long time. So she's got some great tips for doing this with kiddos. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge today. It was really great to see all that work that your kiddos did. It was so much fun. Sharon, you just returned from spring break and you spent 8 hours at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. I did not know such a thing existed. That's so cool. Fun. You'll have to share with us more about that. I love it. All right, well, I will give you your day back. Thank you all and enjoy your Monday, and we'll see you all next week.